YouTube. I'm here to do my prediction video for UFC Fight Night Rodriguez versus Stevens. Let's start at the bottom. The first fight is Claudio Puelles versus Marcos Rosa. And to me, I just think Claudio's better everywhere. I think he's the better striker, and I think he's especially the better grappler. I think Marcos' only chance is really kind of on the feet. I think on the ground, if Claudio gets there, he's going to win pretty easily. And that's what I think is going to happen. I think Claudio is going to get to the ground and win by first round sub. I think he's just way better on the ground. Next is Sijara Eubanks versus Bethe Correia, and this is kind of the same thing. I think striking, they're pretty close. I think Sijara just hits harder, but I think on the ground, Sijara has an insanely huge advantage. And I just think that's what's going to happen. I think Sijara is going to be able to get the takedowns kind of whenever she wants, and I don't know if she'll finish her in the first, but I think she'll finish her eventually if she can consistently get to the ground, which I think she will. So I just got Sijara winning by submission sooner or later. I don't know which round it'll be in, but I think she wins by sub. Next, we got Vinicius Moreira versus Paul Craig. And this is basically just two really good jiu-jitsu fighters going at it. I think striking-wise, neither of these guys are great. Paul Craig's probably a little bit more active on the feet, but neither guy's really great at striking. In terms of jiu-jitsu, Moreira's probably a little bit more polished, but I think Craig is overall better. I think he's more active and more offensive with his guard and everything like that. Like I said, Moreira's probably a little bit more clean technically with his jiu-jitsu, but like I said, I think on the feet, Craig's got the advantage, and I think in terms of offense on the ground, I think I've got Craig. So I think Craig's going to win by finish sooner or later. I don't know what round either, but I think Craig eventually gets the finish. Next, we got Sergio Pettis versus Tyson Nam, and to me, Tyson Nam's looked really good since he's moved to flyweight. I think he's gone like 6-2 in his last 8, and his only 2 losses were against really good wrestlers. Sergio's probably the better striker overall, but I never have faith in Sergio. I feel like his super lack of finishing ability and his overwhelming consistent ability to lose the 3rd round in almost every fight he's ever been in. You know, he's just, one of the most technical fighters you ever see, but he, for some reason, just can't get to the super elite level. Tyson Nam's probably not as good as him technically, but I think he hits way harder. I don't know. I just feel like Sergio's going to get clipped sooner or later. I think the way Tyson fights, he's not going to be afraid to mix it up with him, and I think sooner or later he's going to catch Sergio. I don't know if it'll be in the first, but I think in the 2nd or 3rd, eventually Tyson's going to catch him with something big and knock him out. I know it's probably not going to happen, but I don't know. I just don't have a ton of faith in Sergio. I know he had a hard time making this weight. That's why he moved up to 35, and then he got beat down really easily against the bigger dudes at 35. He's a hard guy to tell where he's at in his career right now, so I'm leaning towards Nam. I think he gets a knockout in the later rounds. Next, we got Ariane Corosoli versus Angela Hill, and this is 2 really good strikers going at it, but I just think Angela Hill's a little bit better. Ariane's probably got a little bit more power, but I think overall skill-wise, I'm leaning towards Angela Hill. I think her technique's just a little bit better. It's hard to tell just because I haven't seen Ariane fight a lot of good people, even though her record's really good. Like I said, I just think Angela's fought the better people, and I think her striking is a little bit better, so I think Angela's going to win the decision. Next, we got Marco Polo Reyes versus Kyle Nelson, and striking-wise, I definitely give the edge to Polo, but I feel like on the ground, Kyle's got a massive advantage. I think if Kyle gets it to the ground, he'll probably finish it that round, and this is what I see happening. I think sooner or later, Kyle's going to drag this to the ground and just win by top control, TKO, or rear naked choke. I think it's probably going to happen in the first 2 rounds. And, I mean, we've seen Polo, his ground game hasn't gone that much better. His takedown defense is okay, but once you get him to the ground, he's really, like a fish out of water. He just gets dominated by guys once guys get on top of him. And that's what I see happening. I think Kyle, once he gets into the ground, is going to finish in that round. Next, we got Jose Albert Quinones versus Carlos. I can't say his last name. Both these guys are strikers, and I'd say overall technique-wise, Jose is better, but I think overall power-wise, I think Carlos is better. I also think Carlos is a better wrestler. I don't know if he'll be able to get to the ground. I think Albert's really good with his defense and getting back up. It's kind of just, can Jose out-move and, point Carlos, or will Carlos catch Jose with the big shot? I'm slightly leaning towards Carlos just because he really impressed me in his debut. I mean, even though he lost, he was fighting one of the biggest up-and-comers at 35 right now. Or I think that fight may have been at 45. I can't remember. But the Brazilian dude who's like undefeated in the UFC, like 3 or 4-0, that guy who looks really good. Carlos, like I said, he's a big power puncher, and his cardio impressed me for such a short notice fight. And I think that he might eventually catch Jose and win by knockout. Next, we got Martin Bravo versus Steven Peterson. And This fight's so tough because Martin Bravo, he's 1-2 in the UFC, and I remember on The Ultimate Fighter, he looked like a young Diego Sanchez. But since he's been in the UFC, other than his debut, his last two fights, he's kind of looked like shit, in all honesty. I feel like he got knocked out really early in his second fight. And then against Alex Caceres, it was a good fight of the night, but I felt like he was getting outpointed for almost that whole fight until kind of the end of the second and the third round. He started to take over a little bit, but I mean, the first 9 minutes of that fight or so, I felt like he was getting outpointed. I mean, overall striking technique-wise, it's probably about even. I think in terms of overall grappling, I think Peterson's better. Bravo's probably a little bit better of a wrestler. So that's what's making it tough. It's kind of like if Bravo's on top, I think he's got the slight advantage, but if he's on bottom, I think Peterson has a big advantage. Like I said, striking-wise, neither of the guys are super technical. They're both just kind of brawlers. I don't know. I'm leaning slightly towards Peterson just because I don't think he's ever been finished. I mean, he maybe one time. And like I said, overall grappling, I do think he's slightly better. It's going to be a close fight. It's probably going to be a split decision win, whichever way it goes, but I'm slightly leaning towards Steven. I just think he's a little bit tougher, and I think his grappling is just a little bit better. Next, we got Irina Andal versus Vanessa Melo, and Vanessa's taking this fight on short notice. She's just kind of like, okay. I think Irina's a lot better everywhere, striking and grappling, and I think we're just going to see that in this fight. I think Irina dominates this fight. She might get a late finish with like a submission, but I think she just wins all 3 rounds and wins that 30-27 decision. Next, we got Brandon Moreno versus Askar. I can't say his last name. I know Askar's a really good grappler, and he's undefeated at 10-0 from Russia. But I'm just leaning towards Moreno. I feel like Moreno's just been fighting much better people throughout his whole career, especially like his last 8 or 9 fights, the UFC, and the couple wins he has outside the UFC. He's just been fighting really good people. I mean, his striking, I think, is definitely better than Askar's. Askar's wrestling is definitely better, but overall jiu-jitsu is probably close. Like I said, this fight's going to be close, but I'm just leaning towards Moreno. I think his striking is way better than Askar's, and I think he's going to catch him with a big shot sooner or later. So I got Moreno winning by knockout in like the 2nd or 3rd round. Next, we got Carla Esparza versus Alexa Grasso, and Alexa Grasso looked really good in her last fight, but she was fighting another striker who's kind of absorbed a shitload of damage in the last like 2 years of her career. To me, Carla's also absorbed kind of a lot of damage, but I feel like the big thing in this fight is going to be the wrestling. I don't know if Alexa's going to be able to stop Carla's takedowns or prevent her from kind of controlling her. And that's just what I kind of see happening. I think Carla's going to be able to get takedowns or control Alexa when she needs to, at least 2 of the 3 rounds. I think Alexa will probably outstrike her a little bit, but just get out grappled, and then just, like I said, losing 2 of the 3 rounds at least. So this is how I see it. I think Carla's going to win a 29-28 decision. Finally, we got Yair Rodriguez versus Jeremy Stephens, and, you know, this is really tough just because Yair hasn't fought in so long, and, you know, people are talking him up so much about his last fight against the Korean Zombie, and it was like, that was a really great fight, but I thought he lost that fight at least 3 rounds to 2, maybe 4-1, up until the elbow. You know, yeah, he got the knockout, but that was just kind of luck, you know what I mean? Like, he just threw it out there and got it. I mean, he was losing that fight to a guy who's just a better striker than him, and I'm not necessarily sure if Jeremy's as good as the Korean Zombie in terms of the striking, but he's definitely got a huge power advantage over most of the guys at 45. And the Zombie was catching Yair here and there. Like, he didn't drop him, but he wobbled him a few times. And I just feel like if Jeremy catches Yair with those same shots that the Zombie did, I think he's going to knock him out. I think the power advantage is pretty clearly in Stephens' favor. I think cardio, these guys, like the way they fight, they both have great cardio for their styles. Yair definitely has the better volume, and definitely has a style that can, you know, he could outpoint Jeremy for 5 rounds. But the problem is he has to consistently do that and not get caught. And I feel like he's eventually going to try to fight with Jeremy Stephens, just throw with him, and that's going to be his downfall. I don't think he's just going to dance around him for 5 rounds. He probably could do that. But even if he tries to do that kind of, I mean, it's hard to just run away the whole fight and just do what you need to do to beat Jeremy Stephens. Maybe for 2 or 3 rounds, guys can do that, but for 5, it's pretty hard. And that's why I'm just leaning towards Jeremy. I think Jeremy's going to eventually walk him down and knock him out. I think it might be in the later rounds, maybe like the 3rd or the 4th, but I just think, yeah, you're constantly moving back, especially since they're fighting in like Mexico where it's really hard to breathe. They're like fighting in Mexico City. I think Jeremy's forward pressure and heavier shots is then eventually going to land on Yair, and he's going to win by knockout. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.